The problem of evil. The argument goes as follows. If an all-loving, all-good, all-powerful being exists, why would he allow evil to exist? Well, the logic here is that the all-good, all-loving, all-powerful being should want to rid the world of evil. Now, I am going to make a quick definition here. When I'm referring to evil here, I'm not referring into like the ancient way of like evil used to just be a word that meant destruction more than anything else. Here I am using the very modern form of the word evil, which basically just means sin. The logic here is that the good, loving, powerful being would want to destroy evil eventually. Now, why doesn't he do it right away? Well, the all-loving, all-powerful being could destroy evil in one of two ways. Either one, God could destroy the evildoer, or two, God could change the evildoer into a good doer. Now, I'm sure we all do not want God to destroy the evildoer, because if we're being honest with ourselves, we are all evildoers. We are all sinners. So, we would want God to change the evildoer into a good doer. How does he do that? Well, he has one of two options. One, God could overwrite the free will of the evildoer and force the evildoer to be a good doer. Or two, God can change the evildoer into a good doer with the evildoer's consent. So, in the Bible, we have this concept that God is calling out to the world, asking the world to go to God, to believe in God, and to reject evil, reject the evil of their flesh. A believer, a Christian, will say, "Yes, I accept you into my heart, Lord. Make me good, make me more like you." God will put his Holy Spirit into the believer, sealing the believer to the day of resurrection. Now, at the day of resurrection, the believer is cut off from their former nature, the former nature of their flesh, and is given a new nature of the flesh. They'll keep like the good elements of their personality, right? Like if the believer loved animals, the believer in the next life will still love animals, but like if they loved animals, you know what I mean by that, they will no longer love animals. That's a bit of a dark pun to make, but you get what I mean, right? We're all adults here. You get what I mean. that was a little much. That was a little much, but like basically, if the believer has like a hobby or something, and that hobby is like well and good, they'll still have that element of their personality in their next life, but if the believer used to want to punch people in the face, the believer will no longer want to punch people in the face in the next life. So it's like they're cut off of their former evil nature and are given a new good nature. So that's what we want. That's what we Christians want for the world. We want the world to go to God because one day evil, sin, will be destroyed. Now, will it be destroyed by an annihilating fire, or will it be destroyed by the salvation of people's souls? And we Christians, we want it to be by the salvation of people's souls. In that sense, all evil will be destroyed. But since God doesn't want to just destroy people, but he also wants it to be people's choices if they want to reject evil. He has it set up like this so that the believer can be saved from their evil. Now, this does create the question of why does evil exist in the first place? Well, this is an argument that kind of relies on free will, and I know that some branches of Christianity don't really uphold free will. It's not really an integral concept to Christianity, and I personally am a little undecided on if free will exists in the first place. But basically, God gives us the choice. We can either do good or do evil, right? We can either be like God, or we can be contrary to the nature of God. And being contrary to the nature of God is evil. So, unfortunately for us, we have grown up in the world of evil. The world of evil is all we know. And so it's kind of become second nature for us to be evil. And a big reason for this is that our earliest ancestors, Adam and Eve chose evil. And when they did, they rose up Cain and Abel in the world of evil. And then, like, Cain raised up the Nephilim in the world of evil. And then, like, Seth had his line that we're all living in the world of, like, the Nephilim and stuff like that. And just kind of, like, spiraled downwards into the day we have right now, where basically the second we're born, we're exposed to the ways of evil. And evil is just our second nature. The nature of our flesh, as the Bible describes. And that's unfortunate for us, because we didn't really choose to be evil. We didn't really choose the evil nature. But we can choose to reject the evil nature later on in our lives. We can choose to get away from the evil nature, to flee it, which happens at the day of resurrection for the believer. And that's kind of my answer to the problem of evil, is that God will. It's just, it kind of has to be a process you wait for, because God's waiting for people to say yes. God's waiting for people to decide they want to be rid of their evil nature. Something God very much wants them to choose. He wants them to shun their evil ways, but he still does leave some element of that choice up to the believer. It's debated how much. It is debated to what extent free will exists, but I do believe it exists to an extent. The next argument, I do think this deserves to be a different argument from the problem of evil, because the problem of evil is specifically in regards to, like, the actions that humans commit and stuff like that. This next one argument is the problem of suffering. Now, suffering is just like the negative emotion. Suffering is you feel bad when something happens to you. And that something bad that happens to you can be many things, you know. I do not believe that suffering in and of itself is a bad thing. I believe that it can be a bad thing. I just don't believe that suffering in and of itself is a bad thing, because suffering teaches lessons. For the evildoer, suffering teaches the evildoer what the evildoer has done to others. So this is why we put people in jail. In jail, people suffer. But in jail, as those people suffer, they kind of learn the feeling that they have spread to other people. So in that sense, suffering is not inherently a bad thing. Another thing suffering teaches is it teaches patience. So if an innocent person suffers, well, they're waiting for the day where they don't suffer anymore, but there will be a day where they don't suffer anymore, right? And so they're waiting, And as they wait, they learn patience. So my answer is that suffering is a teacher. Suffering is a teacher. And it teaches very valuable life lessons. And I do believe that teaching a very valuable life lesson is an act of love. Now, do I believe that God is inflicting suffering upon the innocent? No. I believe that suffering to the innocent is a natural result of the fallen world. I do believe God allows it, and as God allows it, he teaches patience. He teaches patience because God promised the end of suffering for the believer. The believer will go to the next life and things will be a lot happier than they are down here. And so this is another instance of the problem of evil. The question really just becomes, why has God not removed suffering yet? The answer is he will eventually, and there are reasons for allowing it to exist in this world right now. It teaches lessons. It teaches patience, and it teaches justice. Important traits that probably wouldn't be learned, at least not as well, without suffering just existing as a baseline emotion. Okay, the next question is, I really want to address this one because I feel like the argument about moral problems with Bible characters, moral problems with prophets, kings, judges, whatever, I just have it listed as prophets here. I feel like this argument from the atheists is actually entirely fruitless on their end. Like, I still don't think any of these arguments really hold up, but I also feel like, you know, if you can prove that if you can prove that there are moral problems with the prophets, what does that actually do to Christianity? What does that do to the religion that says all men are sinners and all men have fallen short of the glory of God? What does that actually do to Christianity? Now, I will say that the stories people bring up when they do this are usually like a story like Judah and Tamar, in which Judah's daughter-in-law was this woman named Tamar. Tamar married Judah's first son, and then Judah's first son died. Tamar married Judah's second son, and then Judah's second son died. And then Judah said, oh, it's okay, you can marry my third-born eventually. And then Judah just never got around to letting the two get married. And so Tamar, of her own free will, this was not a command, this is Tamar's own free will, Tamar disguised herself as a prostitute. And then Judah wanted a prostitute one night, so he went to Tamar, and yada yada yada, a whole bunch of bad stuff happened. A lot of people bring this up, and they're like, whoa, that's moral degeneracy. Why is this in the Bible? Well, because that's the point of the story, is that they failed to be good at anything. This is the point. This is like a big point of the Bible, is that we as human species are just terrible at everything we do. And it never really gets through their heads that this is the point of the story. That's the point of the story. They don't need to be called out directly in the narrative. Sonic the Hedgehog does not need to appear and say, remember kids, dressing up as a prostitute and sleeping with your father-in-law to bring forth children is no good. You don't need a Sonic Says segment in the Bible. You just need to accept that the story exists and that God had nothing to do with it. Okay? A lot of times they will try and twist a story, and I do believe this is intentional. A lot of times atheists will try and twist a Bible story to say that something a prophet did was condoned by God. A lot of times they will try and twist this. I think a big example of this is the story of Jephthah. Now, Jephthah was a judge over Israel. He was like this powerful military commander, and so he was necessary for defending the safety of Israel. Now, Jephthah said, "Hey God, if you win this battle for me, I'll go sacrifice whatever comes out of my house. Whatever creature comes out of my house when I go home, I will sacrifice that to you." And he's like, "I promise this." That's what Jephthah said. And Jephthah won the battle. And atheists will say, well, God helped him win the battle, therefore God wanted the sacrifice. But, like, I mean, guys, it's a war. Billions of Israelites were gonna... Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration. I don't even think there were billions of people on the planet back then, but thousands of Israelites were gonna die if God didn't win the war for them. So there's more here than just the whole sacrifice narrative. And so when Jephthah went home, he saw his daughter-in-law, and because Jephthah wanted to fulfill his promise, he sacrificed his daughter-in-law. This is a story about a moral problem with a prophet in regards to Jephthah making a brash vow, something that the New Testament tells us you are not allowed to do. You are not allowed to make promises anymore because of stuff like this, right? The New Testament tells us, swear neither by heaven, nor by God, nor by the throne of heaven, nor by anything on heaven and earth. Do not make promises. Because you don't know the future. You don't know if you're going to be able to keep that promise. This is the message of the Bible, is that you're just not allowed to make promises in general. And so people go back to the story of Jephthah and they say, oh, well, this is a problem with God because Jephthah did this. And it's like, and they just twist it so that it says something that it doesn't. And so I am going to issue a rule for any skeptic that wants to criticize the Bible. I am going to issue a rule. I will call it the Simon Says rule. Now, the Simon Says rule goes as follows. You do what God says. If God didn't say, you don't do it. So, if you read a Bible story, and you read that someone has done a bad thing, and you make this claim that the thing this Bible character did is a bad thing, which calls into question the integrity of Scripture, what you need to do in that story is you need to show where God commanded that behavior. And don't hit me with the, oh, we don't need to show where God commanded it, we just need to show where God condoned it. We just need to show that, oh, the narrative doesn't call out this character directly, therefore it was completely okay. You want... I'm sorry, but you're asking for Sonic Says segments to be put in the Bible. And I don't want that. I want to just read the story. I don't need Sonic the Hedgehog to come out every single time someone does a bad thing and says, hey, don't do this in real life. Don't do this in modern times. Don't apply this to your own life. This is recording historical events and being brutally honest about the way people were back then. Man, this is the one that pisses me off the most. This is just the one that pisses me off the most. Because it doesn't help them at all. But people still fall for it, and that pisses me off. It pisses me off. Ugh. Okay. We're moving on to the next argument. Now, this is the next argument, is that they say that there are moral problems with the way God acts in the Bible, which is, maybe this is the thing where like we can actually have a discussion, although I still don't think their arguments hold up. Sometimes atheists will bring up God's body count, for lack of a better word. But here's the thing. A body count in and of itself does not tell you how good or bad someone is. So, say an American soldier during World War II. An American soldier during World War II may have killed like 500 Nazis or something. Does that mean the American soldier in World War II is a worse person than a murderer who killed one guy because he wanted that guy's money? Does it? No. And so people will bring up that God has like a large body count or something because of like the flood or something. And they'll fail to realize that that's not the entire story. There are justified reasons to kill someone. For example, self-defense or defense of others, that is a justified time to kill someone. As a punishment for a severe crime, as punishment for a really, really bad thing, like a murderer getting a death penalty is something I think is completely justified for a judge to carry out, and all sorts of stuff like that. Another thing is that different people who have certain jobs are allowed to do things that the regular civilians are not. So, for example, a police officer is allowed to tackle someone and put handcuffs on someone and take that person to jail. If a regular civilian did that, that civilian would be a kidnapper. And so they'd get the police to tackle that civilian, put handcuffs on them, and bring them to jail, right? A judge is allowed to give a death sentence. If a regular citizen gave a death sentence, well, that's a murderer. Whether it be a murderer, regular murderer, or a vigilante murderer, that civilian is just a murderer. And so God, being the ultimate cosmic judge of humanity, has more right than anyone else to issue a death sentence for justified reasons. Right? Right. And when you actually read the Bible, you read the reasons God gives the death sentence. It's on sinners. It's on people who do really bad things. It's on the... I can't remember if they were called the Ammonites or the Amalekites. I think it was the Amalekites. Who, ambushed Israel as they wandered through the wilderness. The Amalekites ambushed Israel as they wandered through the wilderness. And the Amalekites killed, a dozen Israelites. And this was the exact same war tactics that the Amalekites were using with, all the other nations of the world. So when God judges the Amalekites by killing a whole bunch of them, I think that's completely justified. Death for death, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, That's fair. Another thing I would like to say is that different species have different moral codes. And so you're trying to apply the moral code meant for humans onto God. That doesn't work all the time. So, for example, a bear. If you get too close to a bear's den, the bear is allowed to just kill you. And that bear didn't commit a crime. That bear's not a sinner for doing that. The bear's just trying to defend their territory. You, as a human, Whenever a fly is buzzing around your face, you could just kill the fly. You're allowed to do that. This is something that you are completely allowed to do. And so I don't think that when people say, "Oh, God killed a whole bunch of people," oh, that means he's bad. I don't think that works, because it ignores all these specific traits that God has that we humans just don't. He's a different species, so he has a completely different code of conduct for how he interacts with like the different species of the world. He has a different status as us. God is a judge, whereas we are like a lot of us commoners. We are not judges, so we can't do stuff like that. And all sorts of stuff like that. Now, I do know that in saying this, well, are you saying that there is no moral code for God? I'm not saying that at all. I do think God has a code of conduct that he lives by. I just don't know what that is. I just don't know all of the specifics for it, because the Bible is focused on telling us humans what we are to do, because it's like a guidebook for us. As I discussed earlier, I don't think God messes with free will, at least not frequently. So I do believe that God has a code of conduct which he lives by. I just don't think it's the exact same. I don't think it should be expected to be the exact same that humans abide by, and especially not the human commoner, when God is the cosmic judge of all reality. And so we'll move down into like the last one. And another thing, and actually, you know what, before we move on, another thing with this argument, a lot of your examples are taken completely out of context. Alright? A lot of your examples are just taken completely out of context. You don't show people the sins which the humans committed, which made them worthy of these punishments, when the Bible does. The Bible tells us what sins these people commit. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't have to all the time, but when it does, I mean, I think when you're making an argument like this, you're obligated to show the sins the humans made to deserve a punishment like that. And if we're not told what sins a person made that gave them a punishment worthy of death, well, I don't think that means the human was not worthy of death. I don't think that means the human was completely innocent just because we aren't specifically told what their deeds were. I mean, as we were discussing earlier, Judah and Tamar, Judah's firstborn was killed for a reason we don't even know. We don't even know the reason Judah's firstborn was killed. The Bible just does not tell us. All it says was that that person was wicked. And that could be anything from, like, stealing $5 from someone to killing and mutilating puppies. And it's like, I think God is very justified in giving the death penalty to someone who kills and mutilates puppies. So, like, I don't know, when you're making an argument like this, you just gotta keep in mind, there's a lot of factors at play that you don't know. There's a lot of factors that you do know that you aren't telling anyone. And this is just a being of a completely different species and a completely different status than we are. We can't really make all these brash judgment calls that you guys do. So, let's continue on to the next argument. And the last argument I want to talk about today is the argument that foreknowledge contradicts free will. Now, one thing I will say is that free will is not really an integral part of Christianity. There are plenty of Christian denominations that just outright deny the existence of free will, like Calvinists, right? that might be a bit of an oversimplification. I don't think all Calvinists deny free will, but there are a subset of Calvinists that do deny free will, and I'd still call them Christians. I do not believe that foreknowledge contradicts free will at all. I this is actually an argument that like I tried to address in my book Planetary Lullaby. It's not really an apologetics book by any means. It's more like a sci-fi fantasy book, but the big thing is foreknowledge is God's knowledge about what you are going to do in the future. That does not change any amount of your actions that were your own choice or someone else's choice or whatever else. Destiny is built by all of our choices. Destiny is built by all of our choices. Now, God has the most power, definitely. And I would say by the end of the story of life, God will have what he wants. But destiny is built by all of our wills. Everything that happens in the future is built by every single one of us. And God just knows what we're going to do. And he can speak to people. He can use divine intervention. Or he could just let you make your own choices, even though he knows what will result in you making your own choices. I don't really see how foreknowledge contradicts free will when it was still your choice to build the future. The future is known, but it's not decided until you decide it. Well, your future is not decided until you decide it, but it is known. And I feel like that's this strange balance that is a little hard to think about. But that's the thing, is that it's just hard to think about. It's not something that's just like completely incompatible. It's just something that's hard to wrap your brain around. And I feel like that's the thing. It's hard for people to wrap their brains around, so they just say it contradicts. When it's just a large overarching concept of life that's just, I don't really think we can explain. I don't really feel like we can explain how God's foreknowledge works. I don't think we can explain how human free will works. And so, since we can't explain the intricacies of both of these things and how they work together, I don't really think we can confidently make the statement that foreknowledge contradicts free will. I really don't think we can. And the future is built by everyone. It's only known by one, but it's built by everyone. And that's just a complicated thing to think about. It's very complicated, and I just, in a sense, that's a reason why I don't really feel like I can give a solid response to this. Because it's not a solid statement in and of itself. It's an assertion on a very big, incomprehensible element of our reality that's just... It wouldn't... And even if the statement is true, even if the statement of foreknowledge contradicts free will, even if that statement is completely true, that does not debunk Christianity. That does not... Because free will isn't really even an integral part of Christianity. It's just something that we believe is true because, I don't know, we feel like we have free will, and it looks like we have free will, and we make choices, and it's not like something else is making our choices for us, unless you say it's our brains or our chemical nature or something like that. It's It's not foreknowledge. Tell you that, but it's just a very confusing thing to think about. It's just a very, very confusing thing to think about. So that's my answer to a lot of these arguments. To you, they might not be good responses, and I definitely don't think I articulated myself as well as I could have. But I at least hope I added something to the conversation. And I don't know. I don't know how good of an apologist I'm going to be yet. So just accept this video for now, I guess.